Morning Year 2 and welcome to Monday's maths lesson. I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started. Okay, here we are. Hopefully you can see what I can see. So today we are learning to make equal groups by grouping. Okay, so last week we spent a couple of lessons learning how to share, learning the strategy of sharing to help us divide. So now we're moving on to the other strategy to help us divide, which is called grouping. Okay, so just before we do that, we're just going to have a little go at a sharing starter to warm us up. So I want you to share 17 sweets into 3 groups. Now, as I said before, it doesn't matter if you don't have sweets at home. You can represent those 17 sweets using any objects you have in your home. I want you to try and share those 17 sweets equally into 3 groups. Once you've done that, I want you to see, are your groups equal or are they unequal? And how do you know? So how many are there in each group? Maybe you might have some left over. Okay, so if you were to share 17 sweets into 3 groups, okay, so you should have your 3 piles, your 3 groups there, okay, you should have 5 sweets in each group, okay, so if we were to count in 5s together, 5, 10, 15, okay, but then there would be 2 sweets left over, okay, so the groups would not be equal if we were to share all of the sweets because one of the groups would have 2 more than the others, okay. So well done if you managed to do that one. Okay, so just before we begin our learning today, I want you to just have a little bit of a think about what we were learning to do in maths last week. So I gave you a bit of a clue at the start of our maths lesson today. Have just a little think about what were we learning to do at the start of last week and then at the end of last week. Okay, so we are going to be learning today to divide by grouping. So let's just have a think then about what that word grouping means. What do you think grouping is? Okay, have a little think. We'll share in a moment. Okay, so grouping is where we collect an amount into equal groups and then we count how many groups can be made. So whereas sharing is we have a total of objects and we share, we know how many groups we're sharing into. So whether we're sharing into 2, 3, 4 groups. We share into those groups and then we count how many is in each group. Whereas grouping, we're collecting amounts into groups, but we don't know how many groups we have yet. Okay, that might sound a little bit complicated, so I'm just going to share with you an example, which hopefully will help you understand a little bit easier. So here we are, we've got some mittens here. I want to know how many groups of 2 can be made with these mittens. So we need to start off by looking at how many mittens there are. You might want to represent those mittens at home using objects at home. You may have enough gloves to represent those mittens using gloves, or whatever you want to represent them with. And then have a go at putting them in groups of 2. So we have 2, 2, 2, 2. Remember, we don't know how many groups of 2 we have yet. Just put them all into groups of 2, and then you need to try and count how many groups there are after. How many groups of 2 do you have? Okay, hopefully you've had a chance now to have a go at collecting those objects and group them into 2s. Okay, so let's have a go at doing that together then. My pen, I'm going to just draw circles around them in groups. 2 here, there's 1 group, 2 groups, 3 groups, 4 groups. So I've got 2 mittens in each group and there are 4 groups. So there are 4 groups of 2 mittens. So as our challenge then, if you had 10 mittens, how many equal groups of 2 would you make then? So this total, there were 8 mittens here. So if you had 10 mittens, how many groups of 2 would there be? Okay, that would be 5 groups of 2 mittens if there were 10 altogether. Okay, and then the last question to think about is, do all numbers divide into equal groups of 2? So if I had 3 mittens there, would that divide into equal groups of 2? Okay, and the answer is no. Only even numbers, only those numbers we can divide by 2, or we can halve equally, we can divide into equal groups of 2. Okay, let's have a go at another question then. This time, a little bit like we did last week with our sharing, I want you to collect 20 cubes. Now, if you don't have cubes at home, you can use another resource at home, another object you have at home. Try and collect 20 of it. Okay, once you've collected 20 of them, I want you to see how many equal groups of 10 you can make, first of all, how many groups of 5 you can make, and then how many groups of 2 you can make. So start off by putting them in groups of 10 and counting how many groups you have. Then collect them all up again and then put them in groups of 5 and count your groups, collect them all up again, and then do the same for groups of 2. Once you've done each of that, or after each grouping exercise that you've done, I want you to complete this sentence. I can make blank equal groups of 10. I can make blank equal groups of 5. I can make blank equal groups of 2. Okay, so just some questions. How do you sort the cubes into equal groups? How do you make sure your groups are equal? And as a bit of a challenge, what would happen if there were 21 cubes? Would you still be able to make equal groups of 2, 5 and 10? Okay, pause the video here and just have a go at doing those few things for me. Okay, let's go through and share the answers then. So if you collected 20 cubes, you would be able to make 10 equal groups of 2, 4 equal groups of 5, and 2 equal groups of 10. Okay, and then finally then, for that challenge question, if there were 21 cubes, none of the groups would be equal because 21 is not an even number. Okay, so we wouldn't be able to share into equal groups of 2, 5 or 10 because 21 is not a multiple of 2, 5 or 10. Okay, so as your final practice before you get started with your main activity, you've got a table here. So one side you can see the representation, one side you can see the description. Okay, now most of the representations have been filled out for you. You've got to fill in the missing gaps for the sentences. It's only the third one where it's the other way round. You've been given the description, you need to draw the representation. So go through them one at a time. Let's put this first one together. There are blank altogether. There are blank equal groups of blank. So I'm going to count how many there are altogether. 2, 4, 6. So there are 6 altogether. Oh, now I want to see how many groups of how many I have. So I have 1, 2. I have 3 groups. So there are 3 equal groups of 2. Okay, so that would be the first one. See if you can have a go at the rest of them for me and count and read it carefully because this last one says something a little different. Blank has been sorted into blank equal groups of blank. Okay, have a little go and then the challenge acts as well. Does each group have to be arranged in the same way for it to be equal? Okay, have a little think about that one. So pause video here and have a go through going through this table. We'll go through the answers in a moment. Okay, hopefully you've had some time now to complete this table. Let's share the answers. This first one, we've gone through this together. Let's move on to the second one. There are 10 altogether, because we've got two groups of 5, there are 2 equal groups of 5. And then here, this is where it switches round slightly. 15 has been sorted into 3 equal groups of 5. So I know there are 5 in each group. So I've just drawn 5 dots in each of those groups. And then finally, this last one, 10 has been sorted into 2 equal groups of 5. And does each group have to be arranged in the same way? The answer is no, because this last one here, the triangles have been arranged in a different way. These ones, there's 3 along the top and 2 along the bottom. But here, we've got 1 along the top, 2 and 2. There's still 5 and they're still equal. It's okay that they're arranged in a different way. Okay. So looking at your main activity then, I want you to use objects around your home to group these amounts. So a bit like we did with our sharing, but this time we're trying our strategy of grouping. So number 1, there are 15 counters. So you need 15 of an object. It doesn't have to be counters, it could be anything you have in your home. You should see, first of all, how many groups of 2 can you make with those 15? And then, how many groups of 3 can you make? Okay, maybe, wonder if those groups are both going to be equal, or maybe you might have some left over. That's a little bit of a challenge for you there. And then number 2, there are 10 counters. How many groups of 5 and 10 can you make? So have a go at grouping them in 5s first of all, and then grouping it in groups of 10. And then finally, there are 30 counters. How many groups of 3 and 5 can you make? After you've grouped each amount into your groups of however many, I want you to just complete this speaking form. There are blank altogether. There are blank equal groups of blank. Okay, so for example, there are 15 counters. There are 2 equal groups of 5. Okay, that's not what the answer would be, but just as an example there. Okay, so finally then, as your challenge X, if you'd like to challenge yourself that little bit further, Tommy and Jack each have the same number of sweets. Tommy has 5 equal groups of 2. Jack has 1 equal group. Okay, how many sweets are in Jack's group? Okay, pause the video here and have a try with that one before you come back with me and we'll share the answers. Okay, so Jack has 10 sweets in his group. Okay, so as the final fluency number sentence to end our maths today, 19 add 7. Okay, and your challenge X, how many ways can you show you're working out? Maybe you could show me on a number line. Maybe you could show me drawing base 10. You could even show me drawing 10 frames if you wanted to. Okay, how many ways can you show you're working out for 19 add 7? Okay, so for the answer for this would be 26. 19 add 7 equals 26. Okay. Well, thank you for joining me for our maths lesson today, Year 2. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have, and I hope you enjoy getting a little bit experimental with your grouping different objects. I'll see you tomorrow for some more morning fluency. Goodbye for now.